All right, welcome everybody. My name is Kirsten McCormick. I am the founder of Teen Connected Ventures and the author of Unplugged to Reconnect, which is a parent's guide for parenting teens in the digital age. And I'm really excited to chat with you guys today. Thank you so much for being here. If you have the chat option up in front of you, I'd love to know if you have teenagers, how old they are, and if you had any specific questions that you are coming with so that I can make sure that I cover those, or if there is anything in particular you're hoping to glean from today's presentation. So I wanted to start off just by sharing a little bit about my story. I live in San Miguel de Allende. I'm from Texas. I have 5 kids. The oldest is 21. The youngest is 8. So currently at my house, I have 2 teenagers, a 19-year-old and a 14-year-old, and then a 12-year-old that's just chomping at the bit and so ready to be a teenager. And we moved to Mexico 4.5 years ago during the pandemic. And one of the things that was a really huge motivator for us when I began working with teenagers 4.5 years ago. Well, I've worked with teenagers my whole life. I'm a music teacher and I've trained swimming instructors for the American Red Cross. I've run summer camps. Um, but I really have thrown my purpose and passion into working with teenagers in the last 4.5 years. And it was tied very much to the fact that during the pandemic, my kids were doing everything online, just like everyone else was, right? When the pandemic hit, everything suddenly went online. And so I was watching my kids go from being engaged and active and out doing sports and hanging out with their friends to suddenly being glued to their computers and their phones. And even though before that we had quite good boundaries and sort of rules and screen time limits in our house, it was really hard to enforce those during a time when that was their one and only way to connect with their friends. That was where they were getting their education. That was where they were having any social time. And so I was watching them disappear into their screens. And this was having a huge negative impact on their mental and emotional health. And so I began to think like, what can I do? So we moved to Mexico in December of 2020. The goal being, if we're going to have to be, in staying at home, let's go somewhere where the weather is really good, where we can get outdoors and do some hiking, and the climate is nice. And so we ended up here. At the time, there was nothing going on for teenagers, and so I started doing some outdoor activities with teens just to be able to get them out and off of their devices and help my teenagers make friends. And this, in the course of the next year, grew beyond anything that I had ever imagined. We started with 8 teenagers that would get together once a week, to do these outdoor games, and it grew within a year to 40 kids, and then within another year to about 100 kids who we are doing all sorts of different social and educational activities. And what really struck me is that from everything, my entire experience as a teacher, working with teenagers, and as a mom, is that teenagers need to be in person and face to face with each other. Teenagers need to be around their peers. They're at an age where it's super important for them to develop in-person skills. And I believe that we are in an age where so much of their development is happening online and on cell phones, and it's not healthy or natural, the way human beings have evolved to develop. And I'm not against technology. I'm not against technology at all. Do you have a question? I'm going to mute you. Um, Yeah, so my goal is to teach teenagers how to use their technology as tools. When they're going to be using technology, use it for taking videos and photos and music and all the different things they can create with their technology, rather than it being an experience blocker or having their social lives lived online. So real quick, I want to share. I have a short little slideshow that I'm going to share with you that I put together just that gives a little bit of visuals and some stats. So let's go to, can someone give me a thumbs up if they can see my screen? Are you guys seeing my screen right now? No? Womp womp. Let's see. Hmm, okay. I I am so good at in-person things. I am not great with technology. It's it's my Achilles heel. Uh, okay, well, I'm not going to worry about sharing. I'm gonna verbally tell you guys because talking is what I'm good at. Okay. So some stats that I'd like to share with you guys, just as far as some of the research that I've done with as far as teen development goes. So the average teenager spends 8.5 hours a day on screens. This obviously ranges depending on their family's personal boundaries and limits, but this is when you're polling teens across North America and checking their actual screen time histories. This 8.5 hours a day is not including whatever kinds of educational activities they're doing in school. So 8.5 hours a day on screens outside of their schooling. This particular poll was taken by Common Sense Media in 2023. 95% of teens have access to smartphones, and the depression rates among teens since 2009, between 2009 and 2019, doubled. And this is correlating with smartphone adoption. Anxiety rates have taken a similar spike up. So both depression and anxiety have really, really skyrocketed in the last 15 years since the adoption of kids having smartphones in their pockets. And so what parents need to know about this, and most parents have some idea of have been able to observe this some, is that this has a huge impact on their development. This disrupts their sleep patterns. You know, it's really hard for them to sleep if they're continually scrolling at night. And even if they're not scrolling right before bed, being on phones for multiple hours a day changes their brain patterns and makes it harder for them to sleep. We've seen a decrease in face-to-face social skills. I'm friends with a lot of teachers in my hometown in Texas, and they have said that in the last 5 years since coming back after the pandemic, kids' social skills are so much worse than they were before, and this has a lot to do with them getting their development online instead of face to face. Kids deal already, it's hard being a teenager. It's hard um, worrying about what other people are going to think of you and worry about missing out on activities. And so being able to see constantly your friends and acquaintances and people from school or people you know online only presenting all of the good things really raises their anxiety levels, and it gives them this constant comparison, always comparing not only physically their physical bodies, their faces, their skin, but also it always looks like other people are having more fun than them or doing more things than them. And this has a huge impact on their identity formation. It also forms very addictive patterns. You know, as adults, we are already familiar with the fact that we get this little dopamine hit every time we get a notification or something happens online. And it forms this pattern of going and checking, scrolling. And it's even more difficult for teenagers who are in this super sensitive developmental phase of their life to be able to resist the addiction. It's pretty much impossible. Um, and we've seen confidence levels drop because of this constant comparison. And so, our goal as parents is obviously for our kids to be able to develop in a healthy way, you know, and it's up to each family to decide what their own screen time limits are, their boundaries are in their families. It's up to us as parents to model for them healthy screen time usage and what it's like to be present. And so my goal in the what I teach and the trainings that I do for parents isn't to say how many hours a day is healthy or what your family's guidelines and rules should be, as much as it is to say that it's super important for us to be intentional about it as parents. And it's one of those things that can seem really, really overwhelming. It's kind of like looking at how, one comparison is how it's really hard to find good, healthy food. And we can be like, oh, it's impossible. Everyone's, selling all of this processed food and it's constant and it's everywhere. But in this particular case, one thing I love about even though the stats about screen addiction and anxiety and depression are really scary, we have so much control over it. We get to decide when our kids get devices, when they get phones. We get to decide when and how they use them. And so we really can be intentional. And I think we're coming into an age and a stage where parents are waking up and we're more aware. 10 years ago, we may not have realized the the incredible impact and how negative the impact is on our kids' mental and emotional health. But now, with all of these studies that are coming out, and it's not just correlation, they are showing now causation, the number of hours of screen time kids have every day directly causing depression, anxiety, and leading to these increased states of stress. And so now, as parents, we can say, okay, we see this and we're going to do something about it. So on that note, I have a book that I've written that it's a free guide that um, anybody can access, that I will send out with the recording a link to my book. It's called Unplugged to Reconnect. And it's basically goes through some of the stats and everything like I've just mentioned, but then a whole um, the whole second half of the book is ideas and things that parents can do, things that they can incorporate into their own families and into their communities and schools for solutions, because this is not a problem without solutions. So that is a resource that I want to give to you guys. And then I want to talk to you guys a little bit about the adventure camps that I've developed, because um, I can't fix the whole world. None of we all look at all the problems in the world, and we can either focus on the problems and become overwhelmed and depressed ourselves about how many things are wrong in the world, or we can look at what things we can impact in our little corner of the world. And so that's what I've chosen to do, is how can I make my little corner of the world better and offer resources for those that choose to come into my space and interact with me. And so that is where Teen Connect Adventures comes from. So over the last 4.5 years, I have started working with the teenagers here in San Miguel. A lot of them are expat or kids that have immigrated here from other places. And then there's also local Mexican kids that are involved. And we do all sorts of local events. We have classes and clubs. I teach musical theater. We do a lot of camping trips. And through this is how we've started doing the adventure trips that we're inviting people from other places to come be a part of, is because I would see the kids come on these adventure trips, and we would go out, and for the most part, we're going places where there isn't a lot of cell signal. And so the kids are forced to, just by lack of having cell signal, put their phones away and interact with each other in person. And the rate at which they bonded, became friends, I saw them interacting more. The way their kids are different when they have a phone in their hand or their pocket and when they don't. And it's like watching them wake up. It's kind of like in The Wizard of Oz, when you go from being in black and white and suddenly she steps into Oz and everything turns into color. That's a little bit what it's like watching kids come to the adventure camps. Is, they come in maybe with their headphones and their cell phones, and they're very like in themselves. And then over the course of the first day or two, it's like watching them wake up and come alive. And the kids themselves report being happier, feeling more connected to their friends. They felt like they were able to make friends faster without having their phones around, which is something that, kids can go to, they can go to a new place where there's activities going on for, with other teenagers. But if they walk into a new space or a new school and everybody is staring at their phones, that is a very difficult environment in which to try and integrate. And so the natural reaction is to pull out your own phone. And we as adults do this too. So we know exactly how it feels. It's the natural reaction when you feel socially awkward is to pull out your phone. It gives you something to do, it gives you something to focus on, it makes you look busy. It removes that sort of like vulnerability. It puts this sort of invisible wall up around us. And so that's my goal, is to remove that invisible digital wall from around the kids and take down bit by bit the barriers, the social barriers, and then allow them to get to know each other, to bond, um, and to provide them with lots of experiences within a safe environment where they are being pushed outside of their comfort zone. Kids that may be nervous to hike up to a cliff edge, or nervous to jump out of the canoe and swim in the river, or nervous to get on a horse for the first time, with the positive peer pressure of their friends being like, come on, you can do it, it's really fun. They're more likely to try things that they wouldn't otherwise. And so throughout the course of the camp, we're watching them take these little calculated but very, very healthy risks and build confidence. And this is one of the really, really beautiful things that happens when they're doing these things in real life, is that the teenagers that we see in this generation now are very worldly wise. Many of them are exposed to a lot of things and have a lot of head knowledge, because they can watch reels and TikToks and videos from people anywhere and everywhere doing all sorts of things. So they get this sort of false sense of familiarity. So maybe, for instance, there's kids that are really interested in cooking. So they watch lots of videos of cooking, people doing recipes. But the way that these videos are designed to look is it makes it look as if cooking is this really easy thing, and that you do it, and the first time you try it, it's going to go perfect, and then you have this recipe and it's great. And so they get this false sense of understanding what it's like. But until they go into the kitchen and get the ingredients out and put them together with their own hands, they are uh, they don't have the experience. And until they also mess something up, they don't have the experience of what it's like to make a mistake and then it to be okay. So confidence doesn't come from head knowledge of doing something. Confidence comes from actually doing something in real life. Michelle is asking, when is the camp? What is the cost? Is there a web page? Yes. So I actually I'll share the link to the web page here uh, in the chat. Right now, the camps are based and starting in central Mexico, where I live in San Miguel, although most of them are traveling outside of San Miguel to other places. There's the link to the webpage. Most of the camps. So I'll transition into talking a little bit more details about the camps themselves. So the camps start in San Miguel. We just finished up our spring break camps, but we have 3 camps this summer, a 2-week camp in June, July, and then one that starts at the end of July and goes into August. And each of them go different places. All of them um, involve some sort of volunteer element, because I think that's a really important aspect for the kids to have the opportunity to give back to some of the communities that they're getting to visit. Um, and so you can look, if you go to the website, you see all of the upcoming camps, and then you can see reviews from parents and teenagers that have been there before. The costs range depending on which camp you're doing. They're all 2 weeks long, and it includes everything from when they arrive at the airport and we pick them up, and then we have the camp and until we drop them off again. Some parents travel with the kids to San Miguel, and then they take their own vacation and hang out in San Miguel while we are at camp. And some parents send their kids, depending on their comfort level with their kids flying alone. Some kids have no problem flying alone. Other parents prefer to travel with them. But Yeah, the camps are 2 weeks long, and next year we will be expanding outside of Mexico, but this year we're starting in Mexico. And yeah, so the goal is to start the camps. The kids arrive. We do an orientation here in San Miguel. They give up their phones when they arrive. Um, and then we go phone free. We encourage them to bring digital cameras so that they can capture their experience. And then they also, if at any point they need to contact their parents, we make sure that that is an option for them because we don't want them to be completely out of touch. But it is important. The whole idea is that they are unplugged and so that they're not reaching for their phones in those awkward moments where they're still needing to get to know other people. So I'm going to look over here at the website. So yeah, if you pull up the website, we have the Mountain Vista Adventure, which is June 8th through 22nd, Lakebound Forest Wanderers, which is June 29th through July 13th. And then we have, I have a tween day camp, which is for ages 9 to 13, July 15th through 19th. That one is designed for families who are going to be in San Miguel and want their tweens, younger kids, to go out on day camp explore. Um, it's sort of a bridge to doing the full length camps. So that one is just during the day until the very last night, and then we do an overnight camp out the very last night. And then the final one is the Volunteer Voyagers, Mexico's Cultural Kaleidoscope. And what we're going to be doing today is after this call, we're going to have a 30% off registration drive that will last until Saturday. So, from anyone who registers between now and Saturday, will get 30% off of any of the 2025 summer camps. So the prices are different, but you can see them there on the website, but it will be 30% off of whichever camps you guys were to choose from. I'd like to open it up because I know that parents have questions when it comes to sending their kids to camp. Some of your kids have camp experience, some of them do not. But I'd like to open up the floor for questions uh, to see what you guys want to know. Any any questions that you have that are specific to your kids. Feel free to unmute yourself or to type them in the chat. Do you have any local meetups in San Miguel? I'm not sure if the camp will work for us, but we just arrived in SMA yesterday. Yes, so during the school year, we have teen meetups throughout the year. Right now, I teach the Teen Musical Theater Club twice a week, but that's like a semester-long class. Um, we are going to have, I believe, the first Wednesday of spring break. We're all going to the water park together. And then at the end of April, we're doing a teen artisan fair. And then every Thursday afternoon, there is a drop-in teen girl. It's called Vibe Tribe, and it's like a social, emotional, mental health club. That's not very cool. That's why we call it Vibe Tribe because that would be long and wordy. But that is being led by an art therapist, and she does various different art projects for teen girls. And they get together and they have conversation and do art projects, and it's just sort of a space for teen girls to get together and have a safe space to talk about what's going on with them and to do projects together because it's easier to talk when you actually have your hands busy, um, which is one of the things I have found in working with teenagers is that they learn the most through experiences. And when they are able to be doing something, they absorb and learn a lesson so much more completely than if they're just listening. And we all know that as parents, we can talk and talk until we're blue in the face, and the kids may or may not absorb some of that. But when they have an experience firsthand, they come back to us and be like, "Mom, guess what I figured out?" And you're like, "Oh yeah," and it may have been something you had already told them, but it's not until they themselves experience it firsthand that it's truly absorbed. Um, that's just the way teenagers are. Human beings in general, I think, are that way, but teenagers in particular. Any other questions that I can answer for you guys? So the way it works to register for the camps, if you go and see the camps on the website and you click on any of them, it will give you more details. It will give you a super detailed itinerary. It will tell you like everything that's going to happen in the camp, and then there's a registration button. So the way the registration works is that you register on the website, and then we also do like a video call interview with you and your teenager. The goal is that the teens all understand like what the camps are about and what our mission and vision are, and for us to get to know them, give them a chance to answer any questions that they have, and then we can ask them questions about themselves and just to make sure it's a good fit on both sides. Because while we do have kids that may deal with anxiety and depression or screen addiction. We don't want this to be an experience where parents are forcing their kids to go. These camps should never be some kind of consequence or punishment. It's always going to be a mutual decision on our part and their part to make sure that the camps are a good fit. So we have an interview to let them know about what the camp is like. They can ask any questions that they have. We can show them pictures and get a feel for what it's going to be like. And then it's sort of a mutual decision once we decide that it's a good fit on both sides. Yeah, and then we have the website registration, we have the interview, the parents make the payment, and then once they're all registered, then we add them to a group where they will then be able to start meeting the other campers and get to know each other a little bit so that when they arrive, they already have an idea of who else is going to be there, and it makes it just a nice, a smooth process. So yeah, it's fairly simple and smooth. I am very passionate about this work, and the work that I do with the teenagers, both locally and in the camps, just because I've seen such amazing transformations in these kids, watching shy, withdrawn, anxious kids come out of their shells and be confident and gain skills. And I just don't get tired of that. So if anyone has any other questions, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, I don't want the replay to be so long that it's overwhelming. Oh, let me grab the link really quick to the ebook so that you guys can get the free ebook. And that has all of my research in it for the things that parents can do at home with their kids in dealing with screen time and everything like that. So here is that. That is my gift to you. You can get the ebook. All right. So if everyone has a chance to grab that link, I am going to stop the recording.